This broadcast is important for all people because we are facing the prospect of increasing war and conflict, and this broadcast deals directly with that issue. America and Europe's controlled press explodes with anti-Russian propaganda. Russia is portrayed as a vicious aggressor, as anti-democratic, and even as a vicious denier of human rights for simply daring to prosecute and imprison Jewish criminal oligarchs such as Khodorkovsky, Guzinski, and Berezovsky. Fortune magazine in America estimated that these three men, along with the 8 other leading oligarchs in Russia, stole over 50% of the natural resources of Russia. That's 50% of the resources of the richest resource nation on earth. And they did this in just 4 short years. Arguably, that was the greatest criminal theft in the history of mankind. In writing about these criminals who murdered, extorted, bribed, and cheated to achieve that immense wealth, Fortune magazine also casually mentioned that 10 of the 11 criminal oligarchs are Jews, and that a number of them fled to Israel to avoid legal prosecution, while others received legal protection in Western nations due to powerful Jewish political influence. Perhaps this undeniable fact can give the listener a clue as to why the political and media establishment is so anti-Russian today. But what is the truth about Russia? Is Russia really a danger to the world? In fact, Russia has gone from a communist country to an anti-communist country. Compare the government and media attitude toward Russia with the warm relations of America and Europe with China. China is still formally a communist country, replete with ubiquitous pictures of Chairman Mao in the recent Olympic host city of Beijing. It is no worry to the West that Mao murdered and imprisoned more people than any other person in all of human history. In contrast, Russia has repeatedly and forcefully condemned the mass murder and the gulags under the former communist regime. Russia has lauded and honored the late Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the man who exposed the murderous Soviet system and the gulags. Red China, and yes, it is still red, has not even admitted, much less condemned its crimes against tens of millions of its own people. Mass murderers still hold high positions in the Chinese government. When the Soviet regime was overthrown in Russia, even though Russia possessed the largest military on earth, in the spirit of democracy, a new beginning, and self-determination, it permitted its former empire to be dismembered, even to the point of allowing the independence of territories that existed for hundreds of years as part of the Russian Empire. In negotiations with the West over the relinquishing of Russian control of Eastern Europe, America and Europe diplomatically agreed that if Russia militarily withdrew from these areas, that they would be, in effect, demilitarized. Russia honored its agreements. It relinquished its control and withdrew. How has America lived up to its part of the agreements? Well, it broke them. It continues to incorporate the newly independent states into its military alliance, NATO, and it supplies them with America's most sophisticated weapons of mass destruction. It even builds American bases and posits American weapons right on the doorstep of Russia. In addition, America has made every effort to undermine and cause unrest in every territory of the Russian Federation. Just how would America react if Russia was arming America's neighbors and building military bases on our borders in, say, Canada or Mexico? Or suppose Russia made attempts to incite ethnic tensions in the United States among our ethnic minorities. What would be our reaction? How are the Russian people supposed to react? America has now agreed to position advanced anti-ballistic missile systems in Poland. This act is in complete violation of weapons agreements between America and Russia. With a straight face, American government officials and media pundits tell us that the missile system is only to protect Europe from an attack by Iran. To learn the truth about that lie, all one has to do is look at a map. Poland is in the far north and east of Europe. Turkey, Greece, Macedonia, Serbia, Bulgaria, Montenegro, Croatia, Hungary, Romania, Italy, Slovenia, Slovakia, Austria, and the Czech Republic are far more in line with a supposed missile attack from Iran, but they're not in the line between Moscow and Europe. And from any of those states I just mentioned, it would be far easier to defend Europe from an alleged Iranian missile attack. Poland, again, is right on a direct line between Moscow and Western Europe. The Russians are not that stupid as to believe that the American missiles will be aimed at Iran. Problem is that with the media in control of the Jewish extremist warmongers, Americans are too stupid, or should I say, too media-induced ignorant, to even know what's really going on. Even while the old Soviet-ruled government was tottering, America supported the terrorist Taliban with bombs and sophisticated weapons. And yes, America even gave weapons and weapon technology, advanced weapon technology, to Osama bin Laden and his al-Qaeda terrorists in Afghanistan. We taught al-Qaeda modern terrorist methods. And we taught them in order to fight the Russians. Strange how these shocking facts are almost never mentioned in American media. In Serbia, after the fall of the Soviet government of Russia, America militarily supported the formation of a separatist Muslim state in the very heart of ancient Serbia, what is now called Kosovo. America actually committed terrorist bombings of Serbia. American bombs killed many civilians as we devastated trains, bridges, and many civilian government centers of Serbia, including bombing the historic and beautiful European capital of Belgrade. Contrast that to what happened in South Ossetia. Ossetia is not in the heart of Georgia, but in a disputed border region. South Ossetia is not composed of Georgians. The people do not speak Georgian. They speak a markedly different language, Ossetian. And they are not historically part of Georgia, except for the fact that the entire region was once ruled over by the Tsars, including Georgia and the rest of Eastern Europe. The people of Ossetia overwhelmingly do not want to be ruled by Georgia. They're not Georgians, they don't speak Georgian, and they don't want to be ruled by that country. Now, there's no real argument about these facts. But because of our controlled media, most Americans still don't know them. In light of these facts, how can we say that by supporting Georgia, we are on the, quote, side of freedom? Georgia has launched wars to force Ossetia to accept Georgian rule. The Russians came as peacekeepers through international agreements to stop the fighting and protect the Ossetian people. Agreements, by the way, that we agreed to. The status quo has been maintained for years until Georgia used the attention of the Olympics as a distraction and launched a major attack and invasion of South Ossetia. It was a brutal military invasion that killed at least 1,000 civilians and probably more than 2,000. It caused more than 100,000 South Ossetians to flee to the north as refugees. Many Russian peacekeepers were also killed in a surprise invasion and attack. Russia responded militarily to the war launched by Georgia by repulsing Georgia from South Ossetia and making sure the Georgia military could not continue the conflict by neutralizing its military infrastructure in Georgia and crippling its military facilities and air bases. In fact, Russia's response was measured in comparison to Georgia's attack. Although Georgia bombed and occupied the South Ossetian capital, Tskhinvali, Russia did only minor bombing near the capital of Tbilisi and never attempted to occupy the Georgian capital. In the space of just 2 short weeks, Russia almost completely withdrew from Georgia, save a couple of military checkpoints near the Ossetian border.